Victor asked two very fundamental questions. First of all, when will the Islamic ideology and laws that the terrorists use to justify their atrocities be fully analysed and discussed by the people in charge, both in the UK and elsewhere? And secondly, is it conceivable that failure to discuss the terrorist ideology can not only cause loss of life amongst coalition soldiers, but also lead to a perpetual war against terrorists in Afghanistan? I think the first thing to say is that those who commit acts of extreme violence or incite acts of extreme violence and use the faith of Islam to justify those acts should not be allowed to speak for the Muslim community either in the United Kingdom or around the world. They do not represent the views of the vast majority of law-abiding Muslims who abhor violence. It's true, though, we need to understand the motivation of the small minority who claim some religious rationale for their actions. So we are constantly analysing motivation. We also, of course, are countering radicalisation, particularly of young people, but also in terms of religious leaders and those who have community influence, not just in the United Kingdom, but around the world. And we see it as a very, very important part of our counter-terrorism strategy to tackle some of those fundamental and underlying causes and to make sure that we are tackling at source radicalisation. These are very, very complex issues, but we have strategies and projects not only, as I say, in the UK, but around the world, which are designed to build bridges, to improve relations, to break down barriers, to remove some of the myths, and to make it absolutely clear that the notion that because of the military action we have taken, which we have believed has been in the interests of the security of our country, but also the international community, the action that we've taken in Iraq and Afghanistan is in some way an attack on Islam or on the Muslim community. We do everything to attack that notion, to dispel that myth. For example, very few people these days talk about the fact that it was our government and our Prime Minister who insisted that the then American President Bill Clinton engaged with ourselves and others to stop the ethnic cleansing of Muslims, which was taking place in the former Yugoslavia. People forget that it was Muslims in Iraq who were the primary victims of the tyranny and the human rights abuses of Saddam Hussein. And people should also remember that it is only approximately 8% of the people of Afghanistan who have any support whatsoever for the Taliban as an organization, as a political movement, or as an ideology. And it's also worth reflecting when people criticize and say our mission in Afghanistan is seen as an anti-Muslim mission, that now, in the latest poll, 70% of Afghans believe that the situation in their country is getting better. I think it's very interesting at this stage when we come up to our international conference next week in London, that is not spin or public relations coming out of the West. This is feedback directly from the Afghan people. They do not want the Al-Qaeda and the Taliban to dominate their country, to ensure that their country is riddled with violence, but also run by an ideology that they have little sympathy with. Now, our primary reason for being in Afghanistan, of course, is our own national security interest. If we left, if the international community left, the 43 countries that are there left, within a very short period of time, there would be a real risk that Al-Qaeda and the Taliban would return. But alongside of that, if we are to create that stability on a long-term basis, we've got to win the hearts and minds of the Afghan people. More importantly, the government of Afghanistan has got to win the hearts and minds of the Afghan people in terms of delivering improvements in their everyday lives. So yes, we are very, very concerned about the very small minority of people who act in the name of fundamentalism and characterize their actions as being motivated by Islam. We do analyze their actions, we do consider what motivates them, but we will never allow them to speak for the mainstream majority, the vast majority of Muslims either in the United Kingdom or around the world who want nothing to do with their violence or their distortion of what Islam is truly about.